Welcome to Fairytale Fritz. Please make sure you listen to this recording in a location where you can safely fall asleep. And if you enjoy these kinds of fairy tales and bedtime stories, please hit subscribe and you'll receive updates and more tales. This one's for Conrad. Grimm's Fairy Tales number 33, Der Gestiefelte Kater, known in English as Puss in Boots. Once upon a time there lived a miller who had 3 sons, a mill, a donkey, and a cat. The sons had to grind the grain, the donkey had to haul the grain and carry away the flour, and the cat had to catch the mice. When the miller died, the 3 sons divided the inheritance. The oldest received the mill, the second received the donkey, and nothing was left for the third one but the cat. But this made the youngest sad, and he said to himself, I certainly got the worst part of the bargain. My oldest brother can grind wheat, and my second brother can ride on his donkey, but what can I do with this cat? Once I make a pair of gloves out of its fur, it's all over. But the cat understood everything that he had said, and it began to speak. Listen, there's no need to kill me when all you can get will be a pair of gloves from my fur. Have some boots made for me instead. Then I'll be able to go out, mix with people, and help you before you know it. The miller's son was surprised the cat could speak like that, but since the shoemaker happened to be walking by, he called him inside and had him fit the cat for a pair of boots. When the boots were finished, the cat put them on. After that, he took a sack, filled the bottom with grains of wheat, and attached a piece of cord to the top, which he could pull to close it. Then he slung the sack over his back and walked out the door on 2 legs, just like a human being. At that time, there was a king ruling the country, and he liked to eat partridges. However, recently the situation had become grave for him because the partridges had become difficult to catch. The whole forest was full of them, but they frightened so easily that none of the huntsmen had been able to get near them. The cat knew this and thought he could do much better than the huntsmen. When he entered the forest, he opened the sack, spread the grains of wheat on the ground, placed the cord in the grass, and strung it out behind a hedge. Then he crawled behind the hedge to hide himself and lay in wait. Soon the partridges came running, found the wheat, and hopped into the sack one after the other. When a good number were inside, the cat pulled the cord. Once the sack was closed tight, he ran over to it and wrung their necks. Then he slung the sack over his back and went straight to the king's castle. The guard called out, "Stop! Where are you going?" "To the king," answered the cat curtly. "Are you crazy? A cat to the king?" "Oh, let him go," another guard said. "The king's often very bored. Perhaps the cat will give him some pleasure with his meowing and purring." When the cat appeared before the king, he bowed and said, "My lord, the count," and he uttered a long, distinguished name, "sends you his regards and would like to offer you these partridges, which he recently caught in his traps." The king was amazed by the beautiful, fat partridges. Indeed, he was so overcome with joy that he commanded the cat to take as much gold from his treasury as he could carry and put it into the sack. "Bring it to your lord and give him my very best thanks for this gift." Meanwhile, the poor miller's son sat at home by the window, propped his head up with his hand, and wondered why he had given away all he had for the cat's boots when the cat would probably not be able to bring him anything great in return. But suddenly the cat entered, threw down the sack from his back, opened it, and dumped the gold at the miller's feet. "Now you've got something for the boots. The king also sends his regards and best of thanks." The miller's son was happy to have such wealth, even though he didn't understand how everything had happened. However, as the cat was taking off his boots, he told him everything and said, "Surely you have enough money now, but we won't be content with that. Tomorrow I'm going to put on my boots again, and you shall become even richer. Incidentally, I told the king your account." The following day, the cat put on his boots, and as he said he would, he went hunting again and brought the king a huge catch. So it went every day, and every day the cat brought back gold to the miller's son. At the king's court, he became a favorite, so that he was permitted to go and come wander about the castle wherever he pleased. One day, as the cat was lying by the hearth in the king's kitchen and warming himself, the coachman came and started cursing. "May the devil take the king and princess. I wanted to go to the tavern, have a drink, and play some cards, but now they want me to drive them to the lake so they can go for a walk." When the cat heard that, he ran home and said to his master, "If you want to be a rich count, come with me to the lake and go for a swim." The miller didn't know what to say. Nevertheless, he listened to the cat and went with him to the lake, where he undressed and jumped into the water completely naked. Meanwhile, the cat took his clothes, carried them away, and hid them. No sooner had he done it than the king came driving by. Now the cat began to wail in a miserable voice. "Ah, most gracious king, my lord went for a swim in the lake, and a thief came and stole his clothes that were lying on the bank. Now the count is in the water and can't get out. If he stays in much longer, he'll freeze and die." When the king heard that, he ordered the coach to stop, and one of his servants had to race back to the castle and fetch some of the king's garments. The count put on the splendid clothes, and since the king had already taken a liking to him because of the partridges that he believed had been sent by the count, he asked the young man to sit down next to him in the coach. The princess was not in the least angry about this, for the count was young and handsome and pleased her a great deal. In the meantime, the cat went on ahead of them and came to a large meadow where there were 100 people making hay. "Who owns this meadow, my good people?" asked the cat. "The great sorcerer." "Listen to me, the king will be driving by, and when he asks who the owner of this meadow is, I want you to answer, 'The Count.' If you don't, you'll all be killed." Then the cat continued on his way and came to a wheat field, so enormous that nobody could oversee it. There were more than 200 people standing there and cutting wheat. "Who owns this wheat, my good people?" "The sorcerer." "Listen to me, the king will be driving by, and when he asks who the owner of this wheat is, I want you to answer, 'The Count.' If you don't do this, you'll all be killed." Finally, the cat came to a splendid forest where more than 300 people were chopping down large oak trees and cutting them into wood. "Who owns this forest, my good people?" "The sorcerer." "Listen to me, the king will be driving by, and when he asks who the owner of this forest is, I want you to answer, 'The Count.' If you don't do this, you'll all be killed." The cat continued on his way, and the people watched him go. Since he looked so unusual and walked in boots like a human being, they were afraid of him. Soon the cat came to the sorcerer's castle, walked boldly inside, and appeared before the sorcerer, who looked at him scornfully and asked him what he desired. The cat bowed and said, "I've heard that you can turn yourself into a dog, a fox, or even a wolf, but I don't believe that you can turn yourself into an elephant. That seems impossible to me, and this is why I've come. I want to be convinced by my own eyes." "That's just a trifle for me," the sorcerer said arrogantly, and within seconds he turned himself into an elephant. That's great, but can you also turn yourself into a lion?" "Nothing to it," said the sorcerer, and he suddenly stood before the cat as a lion. The cat pretended to be terrified and cried out, "That's incredible and unheard of. Never in my dreams would I have thought this is possible. But you top all of this if you could turn yourself into a tiny animal, such as a mouse. I'm convinced that you can do more than any other sorcerer in the world, but that would be too much for you." The flattery had made the sorcerer quite friendly, and he said, "Oh no, dear cat, that's not too much at all." And soon he was running around the room as a mouse. All at once the cat ran after him, caught the mouse in one leap, and ate him up. While all this was happening, the king had continued driving with the count and princess and had come to the large meadow. "Who owns the hay?" the king asked. "The count." the people cried out, just as the cat had ordered them to do. "You've got a nice piece of land, Count," the king said. Afterward, they came to the large wheat field. "Who owns that wheat, my good people?" "The Count." "My, you've got quite a large and beautiful estate." Next, they came to the forest. "Who owns these woods, my good people?" "The Count." The king was even more astounded and said, "You must be a rich man, Count. I don't think I have a forest as splendid as yours." At last, they came to the castle. The cat stood on top of the stairs, and when the coach stopped below, he ran down, opened the door, and said, "Your Majesty, you've arrived at the castle of my lord, the Count. This honor will make him happy for the rest of his life." The king climbed out of the coach and was amazed by the magnificent building, which was almost larger and more beautiful than his own castle. The Count led the princess up the stairs and into the hall, which was flickering with lots of gold and jewels. The princess became the Count's bride, and when the king died, the Count became king. And the Puss in Boots was his prime minister. The end.